decade or so, past 5 years at least, the Ultra Lone Peak has turned out to be the GOAT, the greatest of all time shoe. This one is the 8, and here is the 5. Right away when I feel the two in my hand, the 5 actually feels heavier than the 8, although it looks more minimalistic. The midsole is thinner on the 5. But you can see how the lugs are gone. This is the shoe that I wear on my motorcycle. You can see it's awesome. It's all black, and it looks cool. And when I found out from Altra that they weren't going to be sending me a free pair based on their warranty program, I realized that I needed to buy another pair of shoes. I needed another pair to go hiking in. And so these are the 8s. You can see that they're covered with dirt. But this is not the first shoe that I used. I actually got a hold of the Topo Pursuit 2 in green, and I went on a hike in those shoes. And I also got a hold of the Stinson 7s from Hoka in blue. So I went out on Memorial Day weekend in the Hoka Stinson 7s, and those were awesome shoes. I don't have a lot of video footage of those shoes, but they were blue, and they're basically a moon boot. They're like the kind of shoe you would wear on Mars if you went to Mars with Elon Musk or something. They're basically moon boots, and they worked perfect. The only issue that I had with those Stinsons was that they were soaking wet when I got back home after Memorial Day. They got soaking wet while I was using them, and then they never dried out. They just weren't very quick drying. But that was something that I found to be a trend with all of the shoes. The Pursuit 2 turned out to be a shoe that stayed wet all weekend, and so was the Lone Peak 8. Now, in the past, when I wear darn tough socks with the old Lone Peaks, like this one, the Lone Peak 5, they were really quick drying and my feet weren't wet. So that's something that changed over time, is that the shoes are wetter. They're burlier and wetter nowadays than before. But if I had known that I wasn't going to get away from that, if I had known that all the shoes I was going to try all were wet all weekend, I probably would have just stuck with the Stinsons. The Stinson 7 was awesome. I loved it. It's a very maximalist shoe in the spirit of the Olympus, the Ultra Olympus 3. It was a shoe that I had 2 or 3 pairs of, and I thought it was awesome. And the Stinsons were a lot like the Olympus 3. They're good, lightweight, humongous moon boot shoes that are just awesome. They do a good job. But at any rate, I sent those Stinson 7s back to Hoka, and I got a hold of the Topo Pursuit 2s in green. And they're a lot like the Lone Peak 8. So the Lone Peak 8, this shoe looks a lot like the Pursuit 2. The one big difference between the Pursuit and the Ultra Lone Peak is that back here on the heel cup, it's got a plastic like skeleton in it. There's a piece of plastic right in here that gives some form to the foot box. It gives some rigidity to it, okay? Now, on the Pursuit, this plastic cup on the heel plate was a lot bigger, okay? So like the plastic cup on the Pursuit was very evident. You could really feel it. It had a lot of hardware in it, and it extended pretty high up onto the ankle. And I ended up getting a crazy blister. I've never really gotten a really out of control, wild and crazy blister from any of my hiking shoes. At least not as evident and as severe as the one that I got on the Pursuit 2. Now, that's not to shed any negative light on the Topo Pursuit 2. I was really happy to get a hold of that shoe. I did switch it out for the Lone Peak 8, but it was a cool shoe. It's very similar to the Lone Peak 8. It just simply has more hardware. It's got some hardware on the foot box for attaching a gaiter. It's got some plastic hardware on the back of the shoe, and it's kind of rigid. Now the Lone Peak 8 has got that same plastic piece in the back of the heel. It's just shorter. It doesn't stick up as high. And that's basically the big difference. But the collar of the ankle, the insert, the opening for the ankle right here, it's kind of made out of a rough, coarse material on both shoes. I would say on the Pursuit, it's got little dots of rubber in there that's kind of grippy. And that's also kind of conducive to blisters. Just luckily, when I went on that hike in the Topo Pursuit 2, which was on 4th of July, I had these in my bag. I had some gigantic blister bandages in my bag because of a different foot injury that I had. I had a weird hole in the bottom of my foot. So since I had these, it was no problem. I just put one on the back of my heel and I was good to go, and I just went on my hike. But then I did end up switching the shoes out for the Lone Peaks in the end. But these are some more Band-Aids that I ended up getting. So with the Lone Peak, since I ended up with the Lone Peak and I've got it here to show you, what I would say is, yeah, it's awesome. It's been working good. What's different about it is that the midsole is a lot burlier than before, meaning thicker. and there's less trail feel. So like with the Lone Peak 5, it's a thin midsole with a ton of trail feel where you feel every pebble under your foot, you know? And you lose that with the newer version. With the 8, there is no trail feel. It just feels like you're walking on like a mountain bike tire. It just feels rubbery and bouncy, and just protective. And then the heel also is a little bit stiff, where on the 5, you can see that this thing collapses like a flip-flop. Like you could just, this thing is completely soft, just like a sock material, basically. Where on the 8, you lose that and you get kind of like this plasticky cup feeling thing where your heel gets in there. The shoe can turn sideways. If you're bushwhacking and scrambling, when you're sliding down off boulders, this whole shoe can kind of turn sideways and your heel can start to come out out of the shoe. I didn't think it was that big a deal, but I did notice it. But a lot of the things that you would expect from the Lone Peak are still here. It's got an awesome wide toe box, similar to the 4. I mean, it looks pretty much the same. A lot of it looks the same, actually. It's similar. The lugs, I would just say, are more rubbery. You can see on the old school Lone Peak 5, the lugs are kind of like bigger and there's fewer of them. On the new one, the lugs are smaller and they're tighter and you get more of a rubbery feel. For this shoe, I am shelving it. I'm not wearing this as my day-to-day shoe. I'm not wearing it as an everyday shoe. I'm only wearing it on trail. And I think that these lugs are kind of small and I don't think that they're gonna do well on cement. If I wore the shoe every day, the lugs would get sheared off pretty quick. And so I'm kind of being conscious of that. And I'm not planning on wearing this unless I need to use it. And as far as it working on trail, it does work on trail, although I thought it was pretty wet. I thought it was a wet shoe. But it is lightweight and capable and it's doing a great job. Yeah, they are kind of like in the middle of the night when I need to get out of my tent. They're pretty cold and wet to wear barefoot when I'm trying to tiptoe around the campsite and whatnot. They're not super plush, you know. Yeah, they're kind of funky shoes. They're kind of swampy. They're a little bit swampy. Since we're on the topic of shoes that didn't work out for me, I want to show you one more. I got the Croc here. But yeah, you know, the Croc, you need to wear socks with Crocs. You can't wear these barefoot. I wore these barefoot and went on an errand around town and they rubbed the skin off the top of my foot. And then my foot kind of stung and hurt while I was going on my Labor Day weekend hike. Yeah, I had a little boo-boo on my foot from the Crocs. Wearing flip-flops with socks to me is kind of crazy. I mean, I want to be barefoot when I wear flip-flops, and having to wear socks with these is kind of silly. I didn't really think that this was like great. I bought these because I'm thinking about going to Iceland, and Iceland is a lot of carp camping, so I figured I would need some flip-flops, but not if I need to wear socks with the Crocs. That's kind of weird. All right, so one more piece of kit that I got a hold of is the Hollow Crew Sock. This is a good sock. I got a hold of the No Ankle Tennis Hollow Sock, the Boot Hollow Sock, and the Crew Sock. Hollow socks are made of alpaca fiber, which is it's similar to merino wool, but it's kind of a step up. It doesn't overheat or get too cold. They're really soft and cozy. They're good for sleeping. And they perform awesome for multiple days. The boot sock from Hollow Socks, I felt like it was kind of a tube sock and it kind of lost it didn't hold its shape at all, but the Crew Sock seems good. This one really, it holds its shape, it performs well. It performed well for several days. My feet didn't get stinky. They don't get hot. They don't get cold. They don't get uncomfortable at all. They just, they're a workhorse. They do really well and make your feet feel super comfortable. So, you know, yeah, the alpaca sock is a slight step up from merino. Merino is good, but I guess, you know, alpaca is better. It's really soft and comfortable, and it does a good job. It does everything that merino does, but it's kind of a step up from merino.